Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're going to Masechtas Chagigah daf Yud Ches. We are going to begin on the top of Yud Ches with Aleph, second line from the top. Rish Lakish Omer v'Chag HaKotzir. Ezo Chag, which holiday shat Chagig v'Kotzir, that you can celebrate and yet you can also harvest, that you can be Kotzir both. Avi Omer Zet Seres. This is referring to the holiday of Shavuos. So Amos, Elam b'Yomtiv Katsir b'Yomtiv Mishari. It can't be talking about Yomtiv itself. El Lava Tashlumin. So this is another answer how we see that there's a din Tashlumin not just by Pesach and by Sukkot. There's also 7-day Tashlumin for Shavuos. This is another explanation. Amar Rav Yochanan El Miatam Chag Osif. When it talks about the holiday of the ingathering, which is referring to not Shavuos. So Ezehu, what is this? This is Chag Sheish Bo Asifa. This is a holiday in which, or a Chagigah offering where there's an ingathering. Habi, so Chavi Yomer Zeh Chag Sukkos. So Chag Osif is the holiday of Sukkot. So Amos Elam B'Yomtiv Malach B'Yomtiv Mishari El B'Chol Shemoyed. So it must be coming to tell us it's Chol Hamoyed. So Chol Shemoyed Mishari, you're not allowed to do malacha on harvest on Chol HaMoed either, as we see at great length in Masechtas Moed Katan. Vilkan Toisus over Yelchayra Mashma the Malacha the Mitzvah Be Midaraisa the Mabigli Mepasik. Since we're learning out from a pasuk, it must be that there's an Isser Midaraisa of doing Malacha on Chol HaMoed. And furthermore, it says in the second parak in Moed Katan, which we just learned not too long ago, Loma boy aval the midrabanan el afil chol hamoed deraisa, etc. V'kashel Rabbeinu Tam the imkain davar aved v'kama malachos the sharinan hasam heichei mishtaru. How is it possible, if it's an issur deraisa, that we matter a davar aved, if there's a monetary loss, that you could do it on chol moed? Heichem etzinu issur deraisa miksaso asu miksaso mutter. How could it be partially allowed, partially not allowed? So that's the question. This is actually one of the first questions found in one of the first Rashis found in the Masechta Moed Katan. Vodetan per Gimel the Megillah Kol Makom Shein Yomtiv Yesh Musav Karin and Dalad. When do we have 4 aliyahs? And it's time when you say there's an extra musav, but there's no isur malacha. And it says beferish Chol Moed Rosh Chodesh Alma Lo Mitzvah Malacha Medikar Med'ein Yomtiv. It says it's not Yomtiv, which means there's not an Isser Malacha. So it's beferish that's not the case. Skipping a few lines in this long Tosfos for Od, Matzin B'Yerushalmi B'Perek Shein Moed Katan Klum Asu Malacha Ella Kedei Shehu Oichem B'Shaisin V'Yu Yagim B'Taira. We want people to be eating and drinking and learning. Vein Poichzim V'Oichem B'Shaisin Mashmel Lishim B'Durabanan. This whole language just sounds like it's a din d'Rabbanan. We want people to not engage in work because otherwise it takes away from the holiday. Skipping a few more lines, again, Mash Malacha B'Moed Havi d'Rabbanan. So if you skip all the way down, V'Yeshleimer La Mishom Dolo Mishtri Midaraisa El Kivan De Akra Samchinan Le Mitzar. We have this pasuk. This pasuk here is really like in the Smach Alma, which is what Tais is saying. It's really a din d'Rabbanan, because B'Shem Rabbeinu Yavid Melechas the Malacha the Mamoyed Midrabanan. So again, this is how Tosfos ends up saying that Malacha on Chol HaMoed is really din d'Rabbanan. Ein Taisus. So again, he says it's talking about Chol HaMoed. So Chol Shemoyed Mishari El Chag Haba B'Zman Asifa. It's just talking about a holiday which comes around the time of when we're engaged in gathering. Hachanami Chag Haba B'Zman Katsira. So basically, what he's saying is it's not really a raya that it's talking about that a person could continue to be chagig to bring the carbon chagigah if you misbring it at the time of Katsira, which is right afterwards. Maybe not, because Chol HaMoed also, you're not supposed to do malacha, and we know there's a din, but there is a din of bringing the tashlumin during Chol HaMoed, not afterwards, so it doesn't really shtim. It's just something that's just the basic time of when these things happen. Machlal Hachanami Chag Haba B'Zman Katsira. So Machlal the Tervayu Svirhu the Chol Shemoed Aser B'Yaseis Malacha. The reality is, it sounds like, again, one's not supposed to do work on Chol Moed. So minhan immediately. So how do we know this is the case? The Tanabanan. The pasuk says, "Es Chag HaMatzos Tishmor." So it says Tishmor for Shiva Shomim for 7 days. The fact that it says this language of Tishmor, so that comes to tell you that not only Yom Tiv, but also Chol HaMoed is an element of like Shmir Shabbos, of being Shmira from doing Malacha. Those are the words of Yeshai. You have Yonasan Omer Eno Sarach. You actually don't need to come on to a pasuk to teach us this din, because Kavachimer. Ma Rishon Mishvi Shin Kedusha Lefnei Lachareihem Asabes Malacha. The holiday, the beginning and the end, which is Yom Tiv, there's no Kedusha before it, none or after it, depending on the first or the last one. Nonetheless, it's Aser. So Chol Shemoed Sheish Kedusha Lefnei Lachareihem Edo Denshei Aser B'Yasis Malacha. So Chol Moed, certainly, because it's sandwiched in between the beginning and the last days. So certainly the middle days are also Aser. Where it says no, Shish Mei Abrashis Yochichu, Shish Kedusha Lefnei Lachareihem U'Mutar B'Yasis Malacha. Now, when it comes to Shabbos, so Shabbos is Aser, but Sunday's Mutter, Monday's Mutter. So you're not going to say that because from one Shabbos to the next Shabbos, that means all the 6 days in between should be Aser. We don't say that. So Maloshish Mei Abrashis She'ein Behen Carbon Musaf. When it comes to the 6 days of creation, there's no carbon musaf, so it's just like a regular weekday. So maybe because there's a carbon musaf by Chol Moed, so therefore it also is a din of Yisr Siyas Malacha. Now Rosh Chodesh Echiach Sheish Carbon Musaf, we know that by carbon musaf, even though there is when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, even though there is a carbon musaf, doesn't make any difference. It's still allowed to do malacha. So that's not, one has nothing to do with the other. Yeah, but Rosh Chodesh Shein Kari Mikra Kodesh. When it comes to Rosh Chodesh, it's not called Mikra Kodesh. Tamer B'Chol Shemoed Shekari Mikra Kodesh. So Hoya V'Kari Mikra Kodesh, this Chol Moed is called Mikra Kodesh. Dinu Shas Mitzvah Malacha. So therefore you can't learn out, oh yeah, but Rosh Chodesh there's Musaf and it's Mutar B'Sis Malacha. No. It has nothing to do with that. It's because it's called Mikra Kodesh. It's sanctified. It's holy. Therefore, there's something sanctified and holy about Chol Moed. Therefore, you can't do the Malacha. Tani Yidach. We learned a similar brisa. It says, "Kol Malachas V'Lo Sasu." You're not allowed to do work. So Limud al Chol Shel Moed she'asim B'Sis Malacha. Rabbi Yosef Galili. So Rabbi Yosef Galili says this pasuk, when it says it's us to do work, is talking specifically about on Chol HaMoed. On Chol HaMoed, one is not allowed to do work. So on this, Rabbi Kiva Omer Eno Sarach. You don't need this pasuk because Haryo Omer El Moadi Hashem. It talks about the holidays. But what is this pasuk talking about? Im Barishon. It was talking about the first day, Yom Tiv. Harik Var Nemer Shabbason. It already mentions that you're supposed to rest on that day. Im B'Shvi Harik Var Nemer Shabbason. It says specifically the seventh day. So what does it mean when it says El Moadi Hashem? So the extra psukim, the redundancies to tell you that not only the first and the end, but also there's an Isser Siyas Malacha when it comes to Chol HaMoed. Tiny Idach, we learn another brace that says Sheish Shomim Toichel Matzos. For 6 days we eat matzah. Yom HaShvi Yatzeres LaHashem. On the seventh day is Yom Tov. So Mashvi Atzur, our Sheish Shomim Atzurim. So he said that just like the last day is we refrain from doing work, so too the days before. So 1 second. Does that mean just like Yom Tiv, you can't do any malacha, you can't do any work, so Chol Moed has the same stringencies, not even Deborah Aved. Talmud Loimer, Uvayom Hashvi Atzeres. Hashvi Atzur B'chol Malacha. Then Shish Yomim Atzur B'chol Malacha. So the Chachamim were given the authorization to decide which days are fully asur, like Yom Tov, and which ones are partially mutter. As we said, when it comes to a davar ha'aved. Let's look at Rashi. Atzur b'malacha, k'dechsiv haikra gufi l'sas malacha. Hare lo masar kasav el chachamim koloimer. The pasuk says you're supposed to not do work on Chol Moed. However, Lumakuan, not refraining from all work, just like on Yom Tov. However, Lupiresh Ezu Muteres Ezu Asura. it's not explicitly mentioned what's allowed and what's not allowed in Chol Moed. Dalare come see Shloi Masam El Chachamim Hayodim L'Havin Al Ezel L'Hatel HaHeter Val Ezel L'Hatel HaIser. So Chachamim had the authorization to be able to decipher and figure out which ones should be mutter and what should be aser to do. Tehim Yomer Ezu Yomtiv Al Pi Kiddush Hariyah. Basa b'chol malacha ve'ezu chol shemoyed de'enu aser b'chol malacha. Now chol shemoyed yegiducha is ezu malacha surah davar she'enu avad ve'ezu malacha shemuteres davar aved. So it's something which does not cause a monetary loss, you're not allowed to do it. However, something which is the davar aved, which causes a monetary loss, that the chachamim matter. Okay, weiter. Umuturin behesped v'tainis shalol kaimis diri ha'umayim atzeres achar Shabbos. So that Sadukim said that Shavuos is always on a Sunday. So what happens if Shavuos falls on a Saturday? So we have to bring the Karbanos on Sunday. Even Beis Hillel holds like that. The problem is that then they're going to think, oh, we're pushing it off Badafka because we want to be like the Sadukim. So in order to counter that, we allow you to have a Hesped, a Tainus, everything. So Vosanyim, Mase, Umes, Al-Kasah, Balud. But Nichnasu Kol Yisrael L'Saif. No, everyone came to give her a eulogy. V'lohenichum Rav Tarfon, however, Rabbi Tarfon didn't allow it. Mishi Yomtiv Shalat Seres Hoya, because it was the Yomtiv of Shavuos. Yomtiv Sakadaitach. Ibi Yomtiv Mikasu. They wouldn't have come, it was the Yomtiv itself. That's not what happened. Ella, what he means is, Imimneshi Yom Tavuach Hoya. It was Yom Tavuach, which means, probably, what does that mean? It was Shabbos, and then it was pushed off to Sunday. And l'chayra we see that in that situation it's aser behesped. I thought we said it's mutter behesped. So kasha kan biyomtiv shechol yos achar Shabbos, kan biyomtiv shechol yos b'Shabbos. So when it comes to a yomtiv that falls out after Shabbos, so in this situation the Yom Tavuach was not on Sunday, so it's aser in a hesped. However, if Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, so Sunday the Sadukim will believe it's a special day, and therefore because of that, it's mutter behesped. Okay, let's see question 9. So question 9 asks the question: Im Yom Tavuach shel achar atzeres mutter behesped v'tainas. So he says like this: Chol atzeres b'Shabbos mutter, because then on that Sunday is the problem. Chol atzeres achar Shabbos aser. If Shavuos fell out on some other day, not on Saturday, not on Sunday, let's say it fell on a Tuesday, so then it's certainly the Yom Tavuach. If for whatever reason you couldn't bring it, then it will be this. Alternatively, if it mamish fell out on Sunday, right, that's possibly what it means as well. So let's look at Rashi. B'Yom Tishchol Yos b'Shabbos, B'Yom Tavuach Achar Shabbos. Therefore, the Yom Tavuach will be on Sunday. Must be hesped. Nesha Oimer Matzeres Achar Shabbos. Really, it's supposed to be on Sunday. V'hai de Alkasa Belud Yom Tav Shechol Yos b'Choilhu. It fell on a weekday. The Ein Yom Tavuach Shelo be'Echad b'Shabbos. That the Yom Tavuach was not on a Sunday. So therefore, because of that, it was Asr b'Hesped v'Tainus. Okay. Fine. If we look at this Taisus of Rosh Chodesh Yochiach, the Shar B'Yasis Malacha. The person's allowed to do work on Rosh Chodesh. Shechein Einu Kori Yomtiv. And then he quotes the third parak of Megillah, V'gam Einu Neser Rak Mishum Minhag. Those who don't do Malacha, it's only like a Minhag. Mishum Bittul Malacha L'am B'Beis Yomim, because as we mentioned about not doing work for 2 days, Rosh Chodesh Rosh Hashanah Mari, Inami Mishum Nashim Donohagu Shulasos Malacha. As he says, maybe it's talking about women that don't do malacha. So men are in certain ways comparable to the sun. Women are like the moon, which is really the way of life, like the lunar calendar versus the solar calendar. And I wrote over here, Golus equals the moon, darkness. Then you have light. But the Chet Egel is what caused the darkness. Women didn't violate the Chet, so they have more or, like before the Chet. Okay. Weiter. Yud Chesamid Beis. Next Mishnah. Noitlin liadayim l'chulin. We wash our hands even when it comes, in order to be able to eat chulin food, which is what we do even bizman hazeh. Ola meiser, and also when we want to eat meiser, and also a truma. So these are things that we do is a chiv that we must do. Now, it says we wash our hands, and Rashi says dai lehen b'netila. It's enough just to do netila. Netila is taking a kli to wash your hands. So we assume he holds because a sheni l'tuma only can make truma a shlishi. So now we wash by touching chulin to truma, or it's a srach truma, as we'll discuss in a second. Fine. So you have to wash your hands when it comes to chulin, meiser, and truma. Well, kodesh, if a person wants to eat kodesh, then matbilin, they actually have to immerse your hands. Says Rashi, avol achol shlomim o chatos v'ashim o kohanim nishmala. There's an extra stringency. Shasar chahatlu yadayim ba'arbayim sa. You actually have to immerse your hands into a mikvah. V'afal pi she'inan el stam yadayim shelo nagu b'tuma diraisa matama es kol guf. So we say that even though the truth is it's called stam yadayim, we still require this. Well, chatos, when it comes to, as Rashi says, liga b'mechatos, if you're touching the water of the mechatos of the paraduma, mayim hamukdoshim b'efer para lahazos behem al tami mesim, and the purpose, as Rashi says, is to sprinkle upon the tami mace nishmal yasera, that are even more strict. Shem nitmu yedei yadav ba'achas min hadavarim, if your hand became tummy from any of the matters hamatamin as yadayim v'los and guf. There's certain things that can be matam your hand, but not your entire body. It could go in vlad hatuma. For example, if it's a vlad hatuma, in that case, only your hands are tame, not your body. You could go in sefer v'chol tuma shehin b'divrei seifrim, like touching a sefer Torah with your bare hands, and everything else which is explained in Masechta Shabbos. So when it comes to chatas, im nitma yadav nitma gufan. If only your hands became tame, it will spread to the rest of your body. It says Rashi, v'chol guf sarach tefila, and therefore your whole body will need to be in a mikveh. V'chol mailas halosh zeh gavoa mizeh medivri seifrim. All of these elevations, these are all dini d'Rabbanan. These are all divri seifrim. Back in the Mishnah, tavel l'chulin. Let's say a person has the intention to be tovel, but he only is doing it to be thinking, I'm going to eat chulin food. So huchsak chulin asil meiser. So because he only had das for the chulin, so he cannot eat meiser sheni. He only can have das on the food that he had das on, or lower, not higher. And for that matter, tavel meiser, huchsak meiser asil truma. You only have das for meiser, so you can't eat the truma. If tavel truma, huchsak truma asil kaidish. If you immersed for truma, that's all you could eat, but not kaidish. Tavel kaidish, huchsak kaidish, however, asul chatas. Then again, you're not going to be able to, the chatas and the mechatas doesn't work. Tavel chamor mutalakal. However, if you had das for, let's say, chatas, so then you can, certainly it's huchsak, it works for chulin as well, or anything below it. Tavel huchsak, let's say a person immersed himself, but he wasn't thinking what he was doing it for, ki'ilu tavel. It's like he didn't do anything. You actually have to have some element of das. You have to know what you're doing. Says Rashi, huchsak, l'schaven l'shem tfilas tahara el rechitz ba'alma. You're just taking a bath. So in that situation, it does not work. For that matter, big day am haaretz, when it comes to the clothes of an am haaretz, in which he's not very particular or careful when it comes to them becoming tameh. So we say it's medris with pirushim. It's considered tumas midras, says Rashi, which is avatuma latami adam kalim kamedras hazav. Just like when it comes to a zav, shematami adam kalim. We know that a zav who has a similar immersion 3 times, he's a zav. So that person, if he touches a person or kalim, he's matamit. So when it comes to their clothes, the clothes of the Am Haaretz is considered to be matama, someone who's a pirushin. It says Rashi, oichli chulehen b'tahara. A pirushin are people that eat even chulin foods in a state of purity. because they're on a higher level, and therefore there was like hesach hadas for that higher level. So big day pirushin midrash l'oichle truma, big day l'oichle truma midrash l'kodesh, big day truma midrash l'chatos. So we see again that there is this progression that if a person who is on a higher level of sanctity, or the food is on a higher level of sanctity, it becomes tameh by coming in contact with something of a lower sanctity. Yosef ben Yoezer haya chasish b'kuhuna v'hayisa mitavchato medras hakodesh, and his apron was considered to be a medras to kodesh, which means he did have some elements of purification of it, that he made sure it was sanctified and safe. However, on the high level of kodesh, it would make it tameh. Yochanan ben Gudgada haya oichel al taharas hakodesh kol yama v'hayisa mitavchaso medras l'chatos. So his garments were even more careful, and therefore was only a medras l'chatos. Says Rashi, Gozru behen b'bigdehem. What is the gezer of these garments? Maybe he'll sit down on them. Ishto, his wife, who was a nida. Varihin medras hanida. So this is the issue. It's possible that his wife may sit on these garments, and while she's in a state of being a nida, and could spread that impurity onto the garments. Okay, let's see the Gemara. Chulun meiser mibo netilas yadayim. The question is, why do we need to do netilas yadayim when we eat chulun or meiser sheni foods? Or mini. Hatruma v'habikurim, when it comes to truma as well as bikurim, when it comes to truma and bikurim, the first fruits, chayavan lehen misa v'chaymesh. So let's go straight into Rashi. So it says Rashi, a zar, a non-kohen, a oichlin, who eats these b'mezon on purpose, so such an individual who would eat truma or bikurim, a non-kohen, he's actually chay misa v'dishamayim v'chaymesh. So Rashi, ha'oichel shagig. If you eat these things b'shagig, then you have to pay an additional fifth beyond what you ate. The achol zarim, the asal zarim, and obviously it's forbidden to a non-kohen. The hey nixi kayin, they belong to the property of a kohen. Says Rashi, u'kadosh ben es isha v'yikach b'damehem avadim mekarkos u'behema tameya. They can purchase certain things with it. They can be mekadosh a woman with it, because it's considered to the truma and bikurim is considered to be like the property of the kohen. U'oyulin be'echad umeya. In the event that it commingles with other items, then it can become batel in a 1-to-100 ratio. But tu'unin netilas yadayim, and it says over here that what does it require? It requires netilas yadayim. What are we talking about? We're talking about truma. Truma requires netilas yadayim, not meiser, not chulin. That's going to be the question. The erev shemesh, and also it needs erev shemesh, as we saw in the beginning of Masechtas Brachos, that when a person is tameh, so after the seventh day immerses himself in a mikvah, and then he achieves some level of purity when the sun sets, and at that moment the kohen is allowed to eat his truma, right? That's what, when you say the Shema, say to Chavim, b'shasha kohanim nechnasim le'echel b'trumasan, and that's from this right here, that when a person is there's erev shemesh, he could start eating the truma. Hara elu b'truma b'bikurim. Masha'ain kain b'meiser. It says b'ferish, not so when it comes to meiser. Yekol shegain b'chulin, so kasha meiser kasha chulin. B'ferish, it says, is a chiyuv only of netilas yadayim when it comes to truma, not by chulin and not by meiser. So why do we do it? So bishul meiser kasha. Hara meir hara rabbanon. So really, it's a machlokas whether or not by meiser sheni you have to do netilas yadayim. Not kol atayin b'bias mayim medivrei seifrim. Anyone who requires that you have to put into water medivrei seifrim, which is a sheni l'tuma. So matame as a kodesh, it's matame that which is kodesh. Upoisel as a truma, and it can passel truma. So what's the difference between matame and being passeling something? So if you make something tameh, it means that not only is that tameh, but it has the ability to matama something else. If you're poisel something, so that becomes impure, but it doesn't have the capacity to go any further. So something which is a sheni latuma is matama as a kodesh, because a kodesh has the ability to become a revi. So therefore, you're matama it, because it becomes a shlishi. However, it's a poisel, it's a truma. Truma can get to the level of a shlishi. Oichlin umashkim in general on a level of a sheni, latuma. That's chulin. But truma is a shlishi, and kodesh goes to ravi. And then it says mutal chulin u'maiser dibur meir. It says beferish that it's mutal chulin u'maiser. However, chachamim oisrim b'maiser, which is our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that you have to do Natil Shadayim on Meiser. So therefore, this is according to his sheet, the Chachamim, that he asers b'Meiser. El chun chun is kasha, kan b'chil kan b'negia. So the difference between eating and touching. Touching the food does not require Natila. However, eating the food does require Natila. Let's look at question 11. Ketzad hoya hatahara lamaga halolu. What is the tahara process if you touched these things? So far, the only one that we saw is truma. Truma, as we saw, is toy natilas yadayim. That requires natilas yadayim. That's beferish. We saw that. So that's 11b. We'll see about Meiser, Kodesh, and Chatas in a second. Matzav Rav Shima Barashi, Ad Kan Lo Pigu Rabban Olehad Rameir El Bachil de Meiser. They only argue when it comes to eating Meiser. Avon Benigia de Meiser, when it comes to actually touching Meiser, when it comes to just touching Meiser, Ubachil de Chulin Lo Pligi. El Idi Bachil Lo Kasha. Kan Bachil de Nahama, Kan Bachil de Peri. Depends if you're eating bread or dried fruits, which is not a machshir. Rav Nachman, Kol Noitel Yad of Peros, and who washes his hands for fruits, Harizem Igasia Ruach. That's like haughtiness. So how do we answer this question regarding Meiser? So when it comes to Meiser, the truth is, when it comes to Ketzad Hayatar Lamaga Halol, if you touched Meiser, so Ein Sarach Klum. So in that situation, by Meiser, you actually do not need to do anything, right? Because it says, Avol b'negia the Meiser lo plagi. When it comes to that, they don't argue. Certainly in that situation, it's fine. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. Hanoitel yadav, a person washes his hands. Nischavin yadav taharos. If he intended to cleanse them, they're pure. Lo nischavin yadav tahara. Lo nischavin yadav tameyais. If you didn't have kavana, then your hands are tamei. L'chein hamat bil yadav. Also, when you immerse your hands, nischavin yadav taharos. Lo nischavin yadav tameyais. So you have to have kavana. I mosanya bein nischavin bein lo nischavin yadav taharos. That says even if you don't have kavana, it's still tahar. So Rav Nachman lo kasha kan l'chulin kan l'mais. We're going to stop there. So when it comes to chulin, it's not necessary for a person to have kavana. However, when it comes to all the other things, you need to have kavana. So let's continue looking at question 11. Kodesh and chatas. This is question 11. So if you touch kodesh, you need tefillas yadayim. And when it comes to chatas, you need tefillas kol guf. So a lot of this is actually from the Mishnah above. Okay. So again, when it comes to Meiser, nothing. Truma, netilas yadayim, kodesh, tefillas yadayim, and chatas requires tefillas kol haguf. Question 12. Tanan, hanoitlin liyadayim l'chulin, v'tayim rebraysin netilas yadayim, yishnu b'truma v'lo b'meiser v'koshkin b'chulin. You don't have to wash for chulin. So ma tirtz b'gemara al stirazu. So kan b'chil de nahama, kan b'chil de perais. There's a difference between eating bread and eating fruit. So when it comes to eating chulin, bread, you are supposed to wash your hands. However, when it comes to eating chulin fruit, that is something which you do not have to do, as gasi ruach if you do. So that is the difference. Okay. Let's continue with TA 7. Ha'im yom tavuach muter behesped. So is yom tavuach muter behesped? So he said it depends what day it is. If the yom tavuach was Shabbos and you pushed it off, so then it is going to be muter behesped. Imchal be'emsa haShabbos as behesped. Imchal be'echa b'Shabbos muter Lafukim hatzadukim. So again, that's TA7, which is the same question really as number 9. TA7. Let's see if there's another question. Nope. TB6. Ha'im sarach netilas yadayim kodim achilas meiser o truma. Is it not necessary? So when it comes to achilas truma, very clear, it says there is a requirement. It comes to meiser, and say it's a machlokas. Let's see. Well, meiser pluto ramer rabano truma kol yama sarich, which is yudches omid beis. Okay, that's TB6. TB6. So we'll do it like that. Let's see a couple of Rabbi Givers questions. We're going to see a couple of lines of Mishnah Berurah on this. Question 52. Matay mutter behesped v'tainis b'yom tavuach shel atzeres. So let's see what I wrote. To take out of the hearts of the Sadukim who say Atzeres falls on Yom Rishon, we show them on Yom Rishon isn't Kodesh and mutter. It's not really the right answer. Matai, when is it mutter behesped? So it's on that day. Question 53. He'im yesh chiyuv netilas yadayim b'negias peros shel meiser sheni? No. How about achilos peros shel chulin? The answer is no. Fine. So let's just conclude by looking at the Mishnah Berurah, Simin Kufnun Ches Dini Netilas Yadayim L'Suda. Let's just see a few lines over here. It says like this in Sif Aleph. Kishiyavu Echel Pas. When you come to eat bread, Shemavarchin Olav Hamotzi Yito Yadav. We wash our hands. I feel any Yodea Lehem Shum Tuma. Even if it's not tummy, Bevarach El Netilas Yadayim. Avol Pas She'ein Mevarchin Olav Hamotzi. Kagon Lachmaniyos. Different types of pocket breads, whatever they may be, where you don't normally wash. The Ein Kovei Suda Lehem Ein Sarach Netilas Yadayim. Okay, so that is the first din we have over here in the Mishnah Berurah. So why do you wash your hand? So tam tekanas netilas hu mishnei devarim. We wash our hands for two reasons. Echad neisarach truma. What is that? V'hainu kivan dehayadayim askani yishein. Our hands are constantly busy touching things. V'noigin b'chol davar. Uvizman shahaya noyeg tuma v'tahara v'kohanim achol truma. The kohanim ate truma. Hayusrich lital yadehim adivri seifrim. They used to have to wash their hands, as we saw, kodem achilas truma, kedei shelo yitamua b'negiyasam, so they would not become tamei when they would touch it. Ukedeshu ragil hakohanim bezeh, so kohanim should be familiar with this. Gazru gamkin al kol ish Yisrael ha'eichel pas she'asul echel ad sheyitol yadav. So technically, there really shouldn't be a chiyuv, but because of sarach truma, because kohanim need to do netilas yadayim before they their hands have to be purified, as we saw in this Mishnah, that really, but because of that, the Mishnah says that noitel niyadayim l'chulin. V'gam achshav she'en kohanim oichlin shumim nei tuma u'batel takana zu k'nei shehu ragilin b'nei Yisrael k'shi yibana beis hamikdash b'meherav yameinu echol b'tahara. They'll be ended with purity. So that's one answer. V'od tam with takanas netila mishum nekiyos u'kedusha, that we should be clean. V'samcha b'gemara. So even though there's an element of just cleanliness that is necessary, we do not wash our hands when it comes to eating fruit. Because truma was typically bread, and that's the reason why that's only an issue. So he says that it's not the derech to eat grain until after it's already made into like bread. Okay, so that's the answer. And he says also, "V'toiv sheyitol yamin tchila kadei shasmoil tishamish leyamin," so that the left hand serves the right. Therefore, you're supposed to wash your right hand first. And then I'll just conclude with an interesting ber halacha, which says over here, "Kasav Rambam b'tshuvah afilu." Yerabam in Navat, the beloved hachi of an avodah zara, afal pikein yanish gam al kalois, kegoin eruvi tavshim v'kedayma v'chein muchach v'taisus chagigah chav beis, diber hamadchil kaman b'seifa diber ayin sham. So the ber halach actually quotes a gemara in Masechtas Chagigah and a couple of blot, which we'll see soon. Ad kan.